Good morning. It's Carrie again, Carrie Lusignan from the Northampton Center for Couples Therapy, and I'm here for my last day in Texas. I'm actually in Fredericksburg. I'm just going through the hill country a little bit before I head back to Western Massachusetts. And I wanted to share some final thoughts about the takeaways from the Brene Brown Daring Way training. I'm actually struggling a little bit to do this one because there was so much information and it was pretty overwhelming, and I think it's going to be weeks and even months before I metabolize it all. And I also think in many ways some of the stuff that was covered on the last day was some of the most complicated stuff. Hi, Dory. So some of it was some of the most complicated stuff, and I'm a little nervous I can't do it justice. So yesterday was day 3. And a lot of you have been asking me if Brene was doing any of the training. And yesterday was the day that we had Brene there. And I feel like even overwhelmed saying it. I don't think I anticipated what it was going to be like. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker, and I'm not much of a group person. For those of you that know me, I'm pretty much an introvert. But this community is so well run in terms of containment and thought and feedback that I was really blown away. And when Brene came in yesterday, we were all in a conference room. There's a cat walking up to me. There's about 120 of us. And I happened to be standing in the front. We were all sitting at round tables. And I don't know if it's just because I was in her path or because she saw that I was overwhelmed with emotion. But she walked right up to me and grabbed my hand and shook it. And I was one of only like 2 people that got to have that experience. And I think it was pretty memorable. And then she got on the stage. And I think she had a plan for what she was going to say. And she stuck to it somewhat. But things came up in the training for people, issues, not surprisingly, around privilege and diversity and race and class. And she's very much a researcher. She's very much somebody who's constantly taking new data that she gathers, particularly in the form of stories, and modifying it. And I got to watch her interact with the audience and address in the most skillful way, the most thoughtful way, and the most brave way feedback that she was getting from the crowd. And so that was really amazing. Some of the main takeaways, and they overlap this, is that going to a training like this is a privilege. It's a privilege on so many levels, right? It's cost a lot of money to go. You have to have a certain degree of education to even qualify for it. And so it's not surprising that out of 120 people, 115 people were white. It's also really interesting that out of 120 people, only 3 people there were men. And that was one of the first things somebody asked her about. One of the guys stood up and noted that and asked sort of what that was about and what they were doing. And she said that 50% of the people who read Daring Greatly are men, and only 2% of the people that come and do her trainings are men. I think this is particularly interesting because her training caters to people in the helping professions, physicians, clergy, therapists, and in general, men who work in those fields tend to be more inclined and open to this. And yet, as she said, there's something about speaking to shame, hi Rick, talking about shame, and being seen with it in person, that the space does not feel safe for a lot of people. So again, I'm just going to glance at a couple of my notes. One of the things that she talked about was that there's no way that we can do the work of shame resilience without feeling grief and pain and discomfort. And grief and pain and discomfort are really hard things to feel. And so the space has to feel safe. And how can the space feel safe if you are struggling with issues around trauma, or you are struggling with issues around being in a minority demographic? So there's so much work for us all to do around creating those spaces, for ourselves and for each other. Another thing she said that I just loved, which I don't know if she said exactly like this, but she basically said that, the Daring Way is a grassroots, messy, small movement, which I thought was cool. And what it made me think of, because for those of you that have read her book, she's a big Harry Potter fan, is Dumbledore's army. And I thought, like, oh my God, I'm joining Dumbledore's army. And shame is like Voldemort. And I just loved that analogy. Let me see. She said, we are all missing a neural pathway to help us move from shame to connection. And she talked a lot about brain science. One of the things is so a few more takeaways that's really great about the Daring Way and her approaches. First, for those of you that are therapists and in the helping profession, because I know a bunch of you are watching this from that lens as well, this is a curriculum versus a modality. And so there's so much more freedom in it to take it and make it your own. In fact, she really encourages that. So that, I'm really excited about. B, hi Aunt Diana. I'm a little nervous now. I'm getting stage fright. The other thing that she says is that, she incorporates in so many of the things that I love. So it's such a comprehensive approach. Mindfulness is a very large component of this. Arts as a way to sort of metabolize and move emotions through the body and have them manifest into something is such a large component of this. That's been a real gift of this training and really immersing myself in her work. My undergraduate degree is in art. I was a professional dancer for years. As many of you know, I'm dabbling in music now, and I've kind of immersed myself back in the visual arts, writing. And so this approach incorporates in the arts, it incorporates in mindfulness, it incorporates in sort of the neuropsychology research. It's very much resilience-based. So it has psychoeducation. So anybody who's thinking of doing this training, and there is another one in July, and it's the only other one they're doing this year, and then it's another year to get into it, I wholeheartedly recommend doing it. And then, she just said some pretty big things. She said, like, racism kills a lot of white people, right? That's not a surprise. She said, shame is still used as the most significant tool of oppression around the world, and you cannot use the same tool to hurt and dehumanize people that you use to heal them. And then, that some people would rather die than take off their armor. So those are some final thoughts on it. This is a little less scripted, and it feels a little more vulnerable, but that feels true to doing this. I loved the community. I'm going on to get certified. I'm going to be integrating it into our center's work and hopefully offering some free services as a result of it in the form of groups. If any of you would like to talk to me about it further, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll see you back in Massachusetts. And thanks for following me. Thanks, Dory. Bye.